The rain didn't wash things clean. That's a lie people tell themselves in movies. In this city, the rain just presses the grime deeper into the pavement, making the whole world smell like wet concrete and old garbage. It was 3 in the morning. My shift at Station 42 had ended 2 hours ago, but I couldn't sleep. I never could after a bad call. We had pulled a kid out of a wreck on the interstate, but we were too late. The silence of my empty apartment was too loud, so I went for a run. I was running through the old industrial park, a place where streetlights flickered and died years ago. It was a shortcut to the river, a place where I could breathe. I was focused on the rhythm of my boots hitting the puddles, the cold air burning my lungs, trying to outrun the image of that kid in the wreckage. Then I heard it. It wasn't the sound of the wind. It was a sound that triggers something primal in you, something deep in the lizard brain that screams wrong. It was a yelp. High-pitched, desperate, and cut short. I stopped. The rain hammered against my hoodie. I stood perfectly still, straining my ears against the white noise of the storm. There it was again. A wet, sickening thud, followed by laughter. "Stay down, you useless mutt," a voice cracked. It was young, arrogant, dripping with that specific kind of cruelty that only exists in people who have never been punched in the mouth. I moved. I didn't think about it. I just moved. I left the main path, cutting through the overgrown weeds and rusted chain-link fences, toward the loading dock of an abandoned textile factory. The scene I walked into will stay burned on the back of my eyelids until the day I die. There was a singular, flickering security light buzzing overhead, casting everything in a jaundiced, yellow glow. In the center of the concrete circle, a wheelchair was tipped over on its side. One of the wheels was still spinning lazily, a hypnotic, tragic motion. Sprawled on the wet asphalt was a woman. She was small, frail, her grey hair matted to her skull with mud and rain. She was trying to crawl, her hands scraping uselessly against the rough ground, but her legs dragged behind her like dead weight. She wasn't screaming, she was sobbing, a low, broken sound that hurt more than a scream. "Please," she choked out. "Please, just leave us alone." Standing over her were 3 of them. Teenagers. They were wearing expensive varsity jackets, the kind that cost more than my monthly rent, and pristine white sneakers that were now stained with mud. They looked like they had just walked out of a prep school catalogue, except for the looks on their faces. They were smiling. They were enjoying this. But it was what was happening 3 feet away that made my vision blur with red rage. A dog, a golden retriever mix, old, with a greying muzzle and cloudy eyes. He was lying on his side, panting shallow, ragged breaths. He was trying to get up, his paws scrabbling on the slick concrete, trying to get between the boys and the woman. He was protecting her. Even broken, even beaten, he was trying to do his job. The tallest boy, a kid with blonde hair and a face that screamed entitlement, took a step back and swung his leg. His expensive sneaker connected with the dog's ribs. The sound was like a dry branch snapping. The dog didn't even yelp this time. The air just rushed out of his lungs in a pained wheeze. His head hit the pavement with a hollow thack. "Look at him," the blonde kid laughed, turning to his friends. "Thing doesn't know when to quit, just like the cripple." One of the other boys, a stocky kid with a buzz cut, kicked the overturned wheelchair. "My dad says these people are a drain on the tax system anyway. We're just doing civic duty." They laughed. They actually laughed. I felt the change happen in my body. It's something we talk about at the firehouse The Switch. When you see a fire, fear vanishes and training takes over. But this wasn't training. This was pure, unadulterated violence waking up inside me. I felt my pulse in my throat. My hands curled into fists so tight my knuckles turned white. I stepped out of the shadows. "Hey!" The word ripped out of my throat like a gunshot. The 3 boys froze. The laughter died instantly. They turned to look at me. I wasn't wearing my uniform. I was in grey sweatpants and a black hoodie, soaked to the bone, looking like a nightmare, walking out of the dark. I'm 6'4", and lifting debris off crushed cars keeps you heavy. I knew what I looked like to them. I looked like consequences. "Who the hell are you?" The blonde kid sneered, trying to recover his bravado. "Get lost, hobo. This is private business." I didn't answer. I walked toward them. I didn't run. I walked with a slow, heavy purpose. The woman on the ground looked up. Her face was bruised, her glasses shattered on the ground near her hand. "Help him," she whispered, looking at the dog. "Please, help Buster." The dog, Buster, tried to lift his head when he heard my voice. He let out a low whine, his tail giving a single, weak thump against the asphalt. That thump broke me. "You touched the dog," I said, my voice dangerously low. "You beat a disabled woman, and you kicked her dog." "So what?" the stocky kid said, stepping forward, puffing out his chest. "It's a stray, and she's just some homeless trash. You want some too, old man." He reached into his pocket. I saw the glint of something metallic, a switchblade. The sight of the knife didn't scare me. It clarified things. It meant I didn't have to hold back. It meant this wasn't a scuffle anymore. It was a rescue operation. "Last chance," I said, the rain dripping off my nose. "Walk away now," the blonde kid smirked. "Get him, Tyler." Tyler, the one with the knife, lunged. He was fast, I'll give him that. But he was fast like a kid playing a video game, not like a man fighting for his life. He telegraphed the thrust, bringing the knife down in a wide arc meant to slash my face. I didn't step back, I stepped in. I caught his wrist with my left hand, the impact jarring my arm, but I clamped down. I twisted his arm outward, hearing the satisfying pop of the shoulder joint, straining. He screamed, the knife clattering to the wet ground. I didn't stop. I drove my right shoulder into his chest, lifting him off his feet and slamming him onto the hood of the BMW parked nearby their car. The metal crunched under his weight. He slid off, gasping for air, clutching his chest. The other two hesitated. The reality of the situation was crashing down on them. They weren't fighting a helpless woman or an old dog anymore. "You're crazy." The third kid, a skinny guy who hadn't spoken yet, yelled. He backed away, hands up. But the leader, the blonde one, didn't back down. His ego wouldn't let him. His face twisted into a mask of spoiled rage. "Do you know who I am?" he screamed. "Do you have any idea who my father is? He'll have you buried. He'll have you in jail for assault." I looked at the woman. She was shivering violently now, shock setting in. I looked at Buster. The dog wasn't moving. "I don't care who your father is," I said, walking toward him. He threw a punch. It was weak, sloppy. I batted it aside and grabbed him by the collar of his expensive jacket. I slammed him against the brick wall of the factory. The air left him in a whoosh. I brought my face close to his, close enough to see the fear finally bleeding into his eyes. "You like hurting things that can't fight back," I growled. "How does it feel?" I tightened my grip, lifting him onto his toes. I wanted to hit him. God, I wanted to smash his face into the brick until he couldn't smile ever again. The rage was a hot coal in my stomach. "Let him go." The skinny kid screamed, pulling out his phone. "I'm recording this. I'm calling the cops." "Call them," I said, staring into the blonde kid's eyes. "Call them right now." I let him drop. He crumpled to the ground, rubbing his neck, looking at me with pure venom. "You're dead," he hissed. "You're so dead." I turned my back on them. They weren't the priority anymore. I knelt beside the woman. Up close, the damage was worse. Her lip was split. Her cheek was swelling rapidly, turning a dark, angry purple. She was soaking wet and freezing cold. "Ma'am, I'm a firefighter. My name is Jack. I'm going to help you," I said, my voice shifting from the monster I had just been back to the professional I needed to be. I took off my hoodie, leaving me in just my undershirt in the freezing rain, and draped it over her shoulders. "Buster," she wept, ignoring her own pain. Is he alive?" I moved to the dog. I placed my hand gently on his side. His fur was matted with blood and mud. I felt a heartbeat. It was thready, erratic, but it was there. "He's alive," I said. "But we need to move fast." I could hear sirens in the distance. The skinny kid had actually called them. Good. The police cruiser tore into the lot, lights flashing, reflecting off the wet pavement. 2 officers stepped out, hands on their holsters. Hands, where I can see them, one shouted. Thank God, the blonde kid yelled, scrambling up. He ran toward the officers, putting on a performance that would win an Oscar. Officer, this maniac attacked us. We were just trying to help this lady, and he jumped us. I stayed kneeling by the dog, keeping my hands visible, but not leaving Buster's side. The officer approached, his flashlight cutting through the dark. He looked at the kids, then at me, then at the woman and the overturned wheelchair. Officer, I said calmly. I'm Jack Reynolds, lieutenant at Station 42. These three assaulted this woman and kicked her dog. The dog is in critical condition. The officer, a heavy-set man named Miller, who I had seen at a few accident scenes, lowered his flashlight. He recognized me. Reynolds, yeah, Miller. It's me. Miller looked at the blonde kid. Then he looked at the BMW. His face changed. It wasn't the look of a cop seeing a crime. It was the look of a man realizing he was stepping into a minefield. That's Julian Thorne's kid, Miller muttered to his partner. I felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the rain. Julian Thorne, the biggest real estate developer in the city, the man who practically owned the city council, the man who signed the checks for the police benevolent fund. Officer, the blonde kid Thorne's son barked. Arrest him. He broke Tyler's arm. Look at my friend. Miller looked at me, then at the kid. Jack, Miller said, his voice dropping. You put hands on these kids. They were killing the dog, Miller. They were beating a handicapped woman. He's lying. Thorne's son shouted. The dog attacked us. The crazy lady let the dog loose on us, and then this guy jumped out of nowhere. It was such a blatant, stupid lie. But Miller didn't shut him down. He didn't cuff the kid. Jack, Miller said, stepping closer. We need to get this sorted out downtown. You need to step away from the animal. The animal is dying. Miller, I'm taking him to the vet, and she needs an ambulance. Ambulance is on the way, Miller said. But you can't leave the scene. Not after an accusation like that. I stood up slowly. Are you serious? Look at her. I pointed to the woman, who was trembling, clutching my hoodie. Look at the wheelchair. We'll take statements, Miller said, his eyes not meeting mine. But you need to step back. I realized then. The injustice wasn't just the beating. It was starting right now. The narrative was already being rewritten because of a last name. I'm taking the dog, I said firmly. You try to stop me, and you can explain to the press why you let a service animal die in the rain while you took statements from the punks who kicked him. I didn't wait for an answer. I scooped Buster up in my arms. He let out a sharp cry of pain, but then settled against my chest, his head resting on my shoulder. He was heavy, dead weight, but I held him like he was made of glass. Jack Miller warned. I'll be at the emergency vet on 4th, I called back over my shoulder. You know where to find me. I walked to the main road, carrying the broken dog, leaving the police to gently talk to the monsters who had done this. As I walked, I felt Buster's warm blood soaking into my shirt. Hang on, buddy, I whispered into his fur. I've got you. I promise. I've got you. The waiting room of the 24-hour veterinary clinic was blindingly bright. It smelled of antiseptic and fear. I was sitting on a hard plastic chair, my shirt stained with blood that wasn't mine, shivering as the adrenaline finally began to fade. I had been there for 3 hours. I had called the hospital. The woman's name was Martha. She had a broken wrist, a fractured cheekbone, and severe hypothermia. They were keeping her for observation. She had no family listed, no one to call, just me. And the only thing she had asked about, over and over, was Buster. The double doors swung open. A vet, a young woman with tired eyes and a blood-stained green scrub top, walked out. She looked at me, then at the clipboard in her hand. Mr. Reynolds. I stood up so fast, the chair scraped loudly against the floor. How is he? She sighed, taking off her glasses. It's bad. He has 3 broken ribs. One of them punctured his lung, which is why he was having trouble breathing. We've drained the chest cavity. His spleen was ruptured. We had to remove it, and his hip. He has severe hip dysplasia already, likely from age, but the trauma has exacerbated it. He's in a lot of pain. I felt a lump in my throat, the size of a fist. Is he going to make it? He's fighting, she said softly. He's a tough old boy. But the next 24 hours are critical. If he makes it through the night without throwing a clot or going into cardiac arrest, he has a chance. A slim one. Whatever it costs, I said immediately. I don't care. Do whatever you have to do. We're doing everything we can, she promised. You can see him for a minute, if you like. But he's heavily sedated. She led me back. The room was cold and filled with the beeping of monitors. Buster was on a metal table, covered in warming blankets. He had tubes coming out of his nose and his leg. His golden fur was shaved in patches, revealing angry purple bruises. I walked over and rested my hand gently on his head, careful of the wires. He didn't move, but his breathing hitched slightly. I saw what you did, I whispered to him. You stood your ground. You're a good boy, Buster, the best boy. I stayed there for 10 minutes, until the vet gently told me I had to leave so they could work. When I walked out into the lobby, the world came crashing back in. 2 men were waiting for me. One was Miller, the cop from the scene. The other was a man in a suit, looking far too awake for 6 a.m. He had a briefcase and the kind of haircut that costs $300. Lieutenant Reynolds, the suit said. He didn't offer a hand. I'm Marcus Sterling. I represent the Thorne family. I stopped, my hands balled into fists again. You've got to be kidding me, Mr. Reynolds, Sterling said, his voice smooth like oil. We understand that emotions were running high tonight. It was a tragic misunderstanding. But my client's 3 minors have stated that you assaulted them with lethal intent, that you broke a young man's arm. They were beating an old woman. I spat. I stopped a felony. According to them, Sterling continued, ignoring me. The woman was erratic. The dog was aggressive. They were defending themselves when you arrived and escalated the situation. I laughed. It was a dark, humorless sound. You're trying to spin this. I have eyes. I saw them kicking the dog while it was on the ground. It's your word against theirs, Sterling said. 3 witnesses against 1. And considering your ... history of PTSD and aggression issues following the warehouse fire last year ... I went cold. They had dug into my file already. In 3 hours, they had weaponized my therapy sessions. Are you threatening me? I stepped closer. Miller stepped in between us. Jack, don't. Listen to him. We are offering you a solution, Sterling said, opening his briefcase. My client is willing to forego pressing criminal charges for the assault on his son and his friends. In exchange, you will sign a statement agreeing that the events were a mutual misunderstanding, and you will agree to a restraining order to stay away from the Thorne family. And Martha, I asked. What about the woman they put in the hospital? We will handle Mrs. Gable's medical bills anonymously, as a gesture of goodwill, Sterling said. Provided she also ... cooperates. So you buy silence, I said. You beat a woman half to death, and then you buy your way out of it. It's a generous offer, Mr. Reynolds. The alternative is that by noon today, you will be arrested for aggravated assault on a minor. You will lose your badge. You will lose your pension, and you will go to prison. He held out a paper. I looked at the paper. Then I looked at the door leading to the back room where Buster was fighting for every breath. I thought about Martha, alone in a hospital bed. If I signed, I saved myself. I kept my job, but if I signed, they won. They would laugh about it. They would do it again. I looked Sterling in the eye. Get out of my way, I said. Sterling blinked. Excuse me. I said, get out of my way. I'm not signing anything. And you tell Thorne that he better hire better lawyers. Because I'm not just going to testify. I'm going to burn his whole world down. Sterling's face hardened. You're making a mistake, Reynolds. A fatal one. Maybe, I said, pushing past them toward the exit. But I can live with myself. Can you? I walked out into the morning light. The rain had stopped, but the storm was just beginning. I took out my phone. I dialed the one number I knew I shouldn't dial. My brother, the investigative journalist who had been blacklisted by every major paper in the state. Danny, I said, when he picked up, wake up. I have a story, and it's going to get us both killed. Danny looked worse than I remembered. He was sitting in the corner booth of the Greasy Spoon, a diner on the edge of town that smelled of burnt bacon and stale cigarette smoke. He had bags under his eyes that looked like bruises, and his fingers were stained with ink and nicotine. He didn't look like a savior. He looked like a man who was already drowning. "You have a death wish, Jack," Danny said, not looking up from his coffee. "I tell you this with love, as your brother. You have a goddamn death wish." "They were killing the dog, Danny," I said, sliding into the booth. My hands were still shaking, a low-level tremor that hadn't stopped since I left the vet. They were laughing. Danny finally looked at me. His eyes were hard, cynical. He had seen too much corruption in this city to believe in heroes anymore. "And now Julian Thorne is going to kill you. Not with a gun. He doesn't do that. He's going to dismantle you, piece by piece. He's going to take your job, your pension, your reputation, and your freedom. And he's going to do it before lunch. I need you to find out who the kids were. Specifically, I need dirt. I need to know if they've done this before." Danny laughed, a dry, hacking sound. "You think this is law and order. You think we find a pattern and the judge bangs a gavel. Jack Thorne owns the judges. He built the courthouse. The kid you threw into the BMW. That's Preston Thorne. He's the golden boy. Captain of the lacrosse team. Volunteer at the soup kitchen on Sundays, strictly for the photo op. The other two are Tyler Vance and Scott Reed. Fathers are a hedge fund manager and the vice mayor, respectively. I felt the blood drain from my face. It wasn't just a rich kid. It was the triumvirate of power in the city. So we do nothing. I slammed my hand on the table. We just let them walk. "I didn't say that," Danny said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I said, you need to understand the war you just started. You didn't kick a hornet's nest, Jack. You punched a nuclear warhead." He slid a manila envelope across the table. "I pulled this an hour after you called. Thorne's company has been trying to buy that old textile factory for months. They want to bulldoze it for luxury condos. The only thing stopping them. Environmental regulations and ... squatters." I looked at the photos in the folder. Grainy shots of the factory. And there, in the corner of one photo, was a tent. Martha's tent. "They weren't just having fun," Danny said grimly. "They were evicting her. It was a demolition crew, Jack. Just a chaotic, sadistic one." I stood up. "I'm going to the hospital. I need to get Martha's statement on record before they get to her." "Jack, wait." I didn't wait. I drove to St. Jude's Hospital with my siren off but my engine redlining. I felt a sick sense of urgency clawing at my throat. When I got to the trauma ward, the air felt wrong. It was too quiet. The nurses wouldn't look me in the eye. I walked to the nurses' station. "Martha Gable," I said. "Admitted this morning. Assault victim." The head nurse, a woman I had known for 10 years, looked down at her computer. "She's not here, Jack." "What do you mean she's not here?" "She had a broken hip and severe hypothermia. She couldn't walk. She was discharged," the nurse said, her voice tight. "Discharged? To who?" "She has no family. A private transport picked her up. Authorization came from the chief of medicine." "Jack, please," she whispered, leaning over the counter, her eyes darting to the security cameras. "Don't make a scene." Men in suits were here. They moved her to a private facility. For better care, they said. They had her. They had isolated the victim. I turned and ran back to my truck. My phone buzzed. It was the fire chief, Reynolds. My office. Now. The drive to the station felt like a funeral procession. When I walked into the bay, the silence was absolute. My crew, guys I had eaten with, slept in the same bunk room with, saved lives with. They were staring at the floor. No one greeted me. I walked into the chief's office. He was standing by the window, looking out at the flag in the courtyard. "Badge," he said. He didn't turn around. "Chief, listen to me." They were. I saw the video. "Jack," he cut me off. He turned around. His face was grey. He looked old. The whole city saw the video. What video? He picked up a remote and pointed it at the TV mounted on the wall. The news was on. The banner read, "Firefighter goes rogue. Brutal attack on teens." The footage was shaky. It was from the skinny kid's phone, but it was edited. It started after I had arrived. It didn't show the dog. It didn't show the wheelchair. It showed me, looking like a giant in the darkness, screaming at terrified teenagers. It showed me grabbing the blonde kid Preston and slamming him against the wall. It showed me twisting Tyler's arm until it snapped. The audio was enhanced, so the snap sounded like a gunshot. "Look at him," the reporter's voiceover said. "Jack Reynolds, a veteran firefighter with a history of mental instability, attacks 3 honor students who claim they were simply exploring an abandoned site." "That's a lie," I roared, pointing at the screen. "That's not what happened. Where is the footage of them kicking the dog? Where is the footage of the woman crawling in the mud?" "There is no other footage, Jack," the chief said quietly. "That's the only clip released. The police report says the woman was a vagrant, trespassing on private property, and the dog was uncontrolled and dangerous. They're saying you snapped. Flashback. PTSD episode." He walked over to his desk and slid a piece of paper toward me. "Indefinite suspension without pay. Pending internal investigation. But Jack, ... between you and me. You're done. The union won't touch this. Thorne has already threatened to pull funding for the news station if we don't act fast." I stared at the badge on my chest. The metal felt heavy, suffocating. I unpinned it. My fingers felt numb. I placed it on the desk. "I did the right thing," I said, my voice trembling. "It doesn't matter," the chief said, looking away. "In this world, the truth doesn't matter. Only the story matters." And they wrote a better story. I walked out of the station. I was a ghost. I was a man with no job, no reputation, and a looming criminal trial. I had only one thing left. I got in my truck and drove to the vet. The sky had turned a bruised purple by the time I reached the clinic. The storm was circling back, heavy clouds choking out the last of the daylight. I felt like I was moving underwater. The shock of the suspension, the video, the betrayal. It was a physical weight pressing on my chest. I couldn't breathe deep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the edited video. I saw myself as the monster they created. "Maybe I am," a dark voice whispered in my head. "Maybe I did want to hurt them. Maybe I enjoyed it." I pushed the thought away. I had to focus on Buster. The lobby was empty. The receptionist looked at me with recognition, then quickly looked down. She had seen the news. I was the crazy firefighter now. "I'm here to see the dog," I said, my voice raspy. "Room 2, she said, not making eye contact. I walked back. The clinic was quiet, just the hum of refrigerators and the rhythmic beeping of monitors. Room 2 was dark, lit only by the glow of the vital screen. And there he was. Buster looked smaller than he had this morning. He was swaddled in bandages, and the 4th line ran into his shaved leg. His breathing was a harsh, mechanical sound, assisted by an oxygen mask over his snout. I pulled a stool over to the metal table and sat down. I put my head in my hands. "I'm sorry, buddy," I whispered. "I'm so sorry. I tried to save her too." My phone vibrated. I ignored it. It vibrated again and again. I pulled it out. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello, Mr. Reynolds," a woman's voice said. It was trembling, barely audible. "Who is this?" It's Martha." I sat up straight. "Martha, where are you? Are you okay?" "I can't talk long," she rushed out, her voice breaking. "They took my phone. I'm using a nurse's." "Jack, you have to stop." "Stop what?" "Martha, where are you? I'll come get you." "No," she cried out. "Don't come. If you come," they said. "They said they'd put Buster down. They said they'd declare him dangerous and euthanize him." My blood turned to ice. Who said that? The man in the suit, Sterling. He was here. "He has papers, Jack." He said, "If I testify for you, if I say anything other than what they wrote down, ... they kill the dog. And they charge me with trespassing and assault. They said they'll put me in a state facility, Jack. One of the bad ones. I can't go back there. I can't." She was sobbing now, a sound of pure, distilled terror. "Martha, listen to me. We can fight them. I have a brother. He's a journalist. You can't fight them, she screamed. They are the devil, Jack. They have everything. Please. Just let it go. Take the plea. Say you were wrong. Save yourself. Save Buster. Martha, I signed it. Jack, she whispered. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. The betrayal wasn't from Martha. She was a victim, tortured into submission. The betrayal was the universe. It was the absolute, crushing realization that justice was a fairy tale for children. She had signed a statement against me. The victim was now the star witness for the prosecution. I looked at Buster. His tail twitched in his sleep. He was dreaming. Maybe he was dreaming of running. Maybe he was dreaming of a world where boots didn't kick him. The door to the room opened. I expected the vet, but it wasn't. It was 2 police officers, not Miller. These were new faces, hard faces. Jack Reynolds, one asked, hand on his taser. I'm visiting my dog, I said, not standing up. Stand up and place your hands behind your back. You're under arrest. For what? I asked tiredly. Aggravated assault, battery, child endangerment, and making terroristic threats. Judge signed the warrant an hour ago. I looked at Buster one last time. Can I just ... Can I say goodbye? Now, Reynolds. They grabbed me. They pulled me away from the table. As they cuffed me, the metal biting into my wrists, I looked back. Buster's eyes opened. He lifted his head weakly. He looked at me. He let out a low, confused whine. He tried to get up, the wires pulling taut. No. Stay, buddy. Stay, I choked out, as they dragged me into the hallway. I'll be back, I promise. But as they shoved me out the back door into the waiting cruiser, seeing the flashing lights illuminate the rain again, I knew it was a lie. I wasn't coming back. I was going into the hole. And Buster was dying alone. The holding cell smelled of urine and bleach. It was a concrete box with a steel bench and a toilet that didn't flush. I had been there for 6 hours. They had taken my shoelaces. They had taken my belt. They had taken my dignity. I sat on the floor, leaning against the cold cinder blocks. My mind was a broken record, replaying the last 24 hours. The sound of the kick, the snap of the arm. Martha's voice on the phone. I signed it, Jack. I was done. The fight had left me. I had thought I was strong. I thought being a firefighter, pulling people from fires, dealing with death every day. I thought that made me tough. But fire is honest. Fire burns because that's its nature. It doesn't lie. It doesn't edit videos. It doesn't bribe doctors. This evil, this bureaucratic, wealthy, smiling evil. I couldn't fight it. I closed my eyes and let the darkness take me. I thought about the kid in the car wreck from the night before this all started. I thought about how I couldn't save him. Maybe I couldn't save anyone. Maybe I was just a violent man looking for a fight, just like they said. Reynolds, lawyer. The guard banged on the bars. I stood up slowly. I don't have a lawyer. You do now. They walked me to the visitation room. I expected a public defender, some overworked kid in an ill-fitting suit who would tell me to plead guilty. But when I walked in, Danny was there, and sitting next to him was a woman I didn't recognize. She was older, sharpered, wearing a suit that looked like armor. Jack, Danny said, standing up. This is Alina Roselles, who I asked, sitting down heavily. The cuffs clinked against the table. I'm the lawyer who hates Julian Thorne more than you do, she said. Her voice was like gravel. He evicted my grandmother 10 years ago. He built a mall on her house. I've been waiting a decade for him to slip up. He didn't slip up, I muttered. He won. He has the victim. He has the video. He has the police. He has arrogance, Alina said. And he has a son who is sloppy. She opened a folder. Danny did some digging. While you were getting arrested, Danny was finding the other angle. Danny leaned forward, his eyes feverish. The skinny kid. Tyler, he didn't just record the fight. Jack, he was live streaming to a private server. A dark web cloud for their little rich kids circle. They share videos of their ... exploits. Vandalism, racing, fighting homeless people. So I said, it's gone. They wiped it. They wiped the phone, Danny said, grinning a manic, desperate grin. But they didn't wipe the server. Because they're arrogant. They think they're untouchable. I have a friend in cyber forensics, Danny continued. He's trying to crack the encryption. If we get that full video, Jack, if we get the audio of them laughing, if we get the kick, it's a long shot, I said, feeling the hope trying to spark in my chest, and hating it. Hope hurt. It's a lottery ticket. It's all we have, Alina said. But right now, we need to get you out on bail. I called in a favor with a judge who owes me. Bail hearing is in an hour. I don't have money for bail, I said. I mortgaged the house, Danny said quietly. I stared at him. Danny, Dad's house. You can't. It's done, Danny said. You're my brother, and you were right. They were killing the dog. The bail hearing was a blur. The prosecutor demanded no bail, citing me as a danger to the community. Alina fought back like a wolf, citing my 20 years of service and clean record. The judge set it at $500,000. Danny posted the bond. We walked out of the jail into the night. I need to go to the vet, I said immediately. Jack, you need to sleep, Danny said. You look like death. I need to see him. If he's dead, if he died while I was in that cell. Double quotes, Danny drove me. The silence in the car was heavy. When we got to the clinic, it was locked. I banged on the glass. The night janitor looked up, startled. He opened the door, a crack, closed. Open at 8. I have a patient inside, I said, my voice cracking. Please. I just need to check. The janitor hesitated, then saw my face. He saw the desperation. He opened the door. I ran back to room 2. The cage was empty. My heart stopped. The world spun. No, I whispered. No, no. I turned around, ready to scream, ready to tear the place apart. Then I saw it. In the corner, on a pile of blankets on the floor, the young veteran from the first night was sitting cross-legged. She was asleep, her head resting against the wall. And lying across her lap, breathing slow, deep breaths, was Buster. He wasn't dead. He had been moved out of the cage because he was panicking. She had stayed with him. I walked over, my knees giving out. I fell to the floor beside them. Buster opened his eyes. He saw me. He didn't try to get up this time. He just stretched his neck out. He let out a soft, low sound, a greeting. I reached out and buried my face in his neck. I smelled the antiseptic and the dried blood, but underneath that, I smelled dog. Warm, living dog. I started to cry. Not the angry tears from before. These were the tears of a man who had hit the bottom and found solid ground. I'm here, I whispered into his fur. I'm still here. Buster licked the tears off my cheek. Rough, sandpaper tongue. I looked at his broken body, his stitched up side, his matted fur. He was in agony. He had lost his owner. He had been kicked and beaten. And yet, he was comforting me. That was the moment. The despair in my gut hardened into something else. It wasn't rage anymore. Rage is hot and burns out. This was cold. This was iron. I looked at the vet, who was stirring awake. I looked at Danny, who was standing in the doorway. He didn't quit, I said, stroking Buster's head. He didn't give up. I stood up. I wiped my face. I looked at Danny. Get the server, I said. Crack it. I don't care what it takes. Hack it, steal it, buy it. Get that video. And what are you going to do? Danny asked. I looked down at the dog who had saved a woman's life and was now saving mine. I'm going to finish it, I said. Thorne wants a war. I'm going to give him a war. I'm going to make sure the whole world sees what they did to this dog. I wasn't a firefighter anymore. I wasn't a prisoner. I was the man who spoke for the dog. And I was going to scream so loud the heavens would shake. Hope didn't arrive with a fanfare. It arrived with a twitch of a leg. 3 days had passed. I was living out of a cot in the back room of the veterinary clinic. Dr. Saroshi finally told me her name had stopped trying to kick me out. She saw the way Buster's heart rate dropped on the monitor whenever I was close. I was his medicine, and he was mine. Danny and Alina were working in a frantic, caffeine-fueled haze at Danny's apartment, trying to crack the encryption on the live stream server. I was on guard duty. I sat by Buster's cage, watching the door, waiting for Thorne's next move. I knew it was coming. Men like Julian Thorne don't just stop, they escalate. It was 2 a.m., the clinic was silent. I was staring at the floor, lost in the dark thoughts that always came at night. When I heard a sound, scritch, scritch. I looked up, Buster was standing. It was shaky. His back legs were trembling violently, and he was leaning heavily against the side of the metal enclosure. But he was up. He looked at me, his tail giving a tiny, tentative wag. "Hey," I whispered, opening the cage door. "Look at you." I sat on the floor. Buster took a step, then another. He wobbled, but he didn't fall. He walked right up to me and pressed his forehead against my chest. I wrapped my arms around him, careful of the stitches. "You're too stubborn to die, aren't you?" I smiled, feeling the first genuine smile crack my face in days. My phone buzzed. It was Danny. "Get to the safe house now." We got it. I looked at Dr. Sarah, who had just walked in to check the fluids. "I have to go," I said. "Keep the doors locked. Don't let anyone in." "Is he okay?" she asked, looking at Buster. "He's standing," I said. "He's ready." And so am I. I drove to the location Danny had texted, not his apartment, but a basement office of a friend in the city. When I walked in, the air was thick with tension. Alina was pacing. Danny was staring at a monitor, his face pale in the blue light. "You need to see this," Danny said. "But Jack, it's bad." He clicked play. The video was high definition. It wasn't just a recording of a fight. It was a trophy video. It started 10 minutes before I arrived. The 3 boys were walking through the industrial park. They weren't just exploring, they were hunting. "Let's find something to break," Preston Thorne said to the camera, laughing. "My dad's buying this dump next week. We're just clearing out the vermin." Then they found the tent. They found Martha. I watched, my stomach twisting into a knot, as they slashed the tent. I watched them tip the wheelchair. I heard the things they said to her, vile, hateful things about her poverty, her disability. Then Buster came out. The dog didn't attack. He barked. He stood between them and Martha, his hackles raised. He was brave. "Get the mutt," Tyler yelled. I watched them corner the dog. I watched Preston Thorne laugh as he landed the first kick. But then, the video showed something the police report didn't mention. After I had thrown Preston against the wall, after the camera had fallen, it was still recording audio. "My dad is going to bury him." Preston's voice came through clearly from the ground. "Call the chief. Tell him the firefighter attacked us. Tell him the dog was rabid. We'll rewrite the whole thing." "What about the woman?" Tyler asked. "Pay her off, or scare her off. Who cares? She's nobody." The video ended. The room was silent. "Premeditation," Alina said, her voice shaking with fury. "Conspiracy to commit fraud. Filing a false police report. Assault with a deadly weapon. Animal cruelty. We have them," Danny whispered. "We have the smoking gun. Upload it," I said. "Send it to every news outlet. Send it to the FBI. "We're uploading it now," Danny said. "But the file is huge. It's going to take 20 minutes to process and hit the cloud servers." Suddenly, the lights in the basement flickered and died. The computer monitors went black. "What happened?" I asked. "Power cut," Danny said, tapping the keyboard frantically. The upload stopped. A heavy thud came from the steel door at the top of the stairs. Then, another. "They're here," I said. I felt the old firefighter instinct kick in. The adrenaline, the focus. Thorne has eyes everywhere. He knew we cracked it. "There's no back exit," Danny said, panic rising in his voice. I looked around the room. It was a trap. "Barricade the door," I ordered. I grabbed a heavy filing cabinet and shoved it against the entrance. "Alina, get on your phone. Call Miller. Tell him we have the proof. Tell him if we die, it dies with us." "Jack," Danny said, sniffing the air. "Do you smell that?" I smelled it. Gasoline. They weren't coming in to get the drive. They were coming to burn it. And us. The smell of gasoline was followed instantly by the roar of ignition. It wasn't a slow burn. It was an accelerant. The heat hit the door almost instantly, radiating through the steel. Smoke began to curl under the frame, thick, black, and toxic. "They're burning us out," Danny yelled, coughing. "Stay low." I grabbed Alina and pulled her to the floor. "Get under the desks." The fire alarm was blaring now, a shrill scream in the darkness. The room was filling with smoke rapidly. I knew fire behavior. In a basement with no ventilation, we had maybe 3 minutes before the carbon monoxide knocked us out. Then the heat would cook us. "The drive," Danny shouted, clutching the external hard drive. "We have to save the drive. Forget the drive. We need to save ourselves." Alina coughed. "No," I shouted. "If we lose that, they win. Martha never gets justice. Buster got beaten for nothing." I looked at the ceiling. There was a small ventilation shaft. Too small for a person, but maybe. "Danny, give me the drive." I grabbed the hard drive. I wrapped it in my jacket. I smashed the grate of the vent with a chair. "We can't fit," Danny cried. "I know," I said, "but we're going out the front. You're crazy. The fire is right there." "I'm a firefighter," I growled. "I eat fire." I grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall. It was a small dry chemical unit. Not enough to put out the blaze, but enough to cut a path. "Get behind me," I ordered. "Hold on to each other's belts. Do not let go. Keep your heads down. When I open this door, we run. We run through the fire. Do you understand? Jack, ... double quotes. Alina was crying. "Do you understand?" "Yes." I pulled the filing cabinet back. The metal door was glowing red hot. I could hear the crackle of the flames on the other side. I pulled the pin on the extinguisher. I took a deep breath of the cleanest air near the floor. Now I kicked the door open. A wall of orange flame greeted us. The heat seared my eyebrows instantly. I unleashed the extinguisher, blasting a cloud of white powder into the heart of the fire. It momentarily choked the flames back, creating a narrow, hazy tunnel. Move, move, move. I charged into the inferno. The heat was unbearable. I could feel my skin blistering. I shielded the hard drive against my stomach, using my body as a shield for Danny and Alina behind me. We stumbled up the stairs. The stairwell was a chimney. The smoke was blinding. I couldn't see, but I knew the layout. Top of the stairs, left turn, lobby, exit, I roared. A primal scream to force the air out of my lungs so I wouldn't inhale the superheated smoke. I felt Danny stumble. I reached back, grabbed his collar, and yanked him forward. We burst into the lobby. The glass front doors were ahead. Standing between us and the doors were 2 men in ski masks. They were holding crowbars, Thorn's cleaners. They looked surprised to see 3 people emerging from the fire like demons. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I was 6'4", of burning rage. I slammed into the first man like a linebacker. The impact shattered his ribs. I heard the crunch. He went down. The second man swung his crowbar. It caught me on the shoulder, the bad shoulder. Pain exploded in my arm, but I didn't drop the drive. I headbutted him. The sound of his nose breaking was louder than the fire. He staggered back. "Go." I screamed at Danny and Alina. "Get outside." They scrambled through the doors. The man I had headbutted pulled a knife. He lunged. I caught his wrist. I looked him in the eyes through the holes in his mask. The fire was roaring behind me now, consuming the building. "You picked the wrong firefighter," I snarled. I twisted his wrist, disarming him, and shoved him hard. He fell backward, tripping over his partner. I turned and ran. I burst through the glass doors onto the sidewalk, collapsing onto the cool, wet pavement. Danny and Elena were coughing, gasping for air. The building behind us was fully engulfed now, flames licking up into the night sky. Sirens, not just fire trucks, police, lots of them. Miller's cruiser screeched to a halt. He jumped out, gun drawn. But he wasn't aiming at me. He was aiming at the 2 men stumbling out of the smoke behind me. "Get on the ground," Miller screamed. Now I lay on my back, staring up at the smoke. My shoulder was throbbing. My skin was burned. My lungs felt like they were filled with broken glass. But I felt something hard pressing against my chest. The drive, I reached into my jacket and pulled it out. The plastic case was melted slightly on the edges, but the unit was intact. Danny crawled over to me. He took the drive. He looked at it, then at me. "We got it," he wheezed. "Jack, ... we got it." I closed my eyes. All I could see was a golden dog standing up in a cage. "For Buster," I whispered. Then the world went black. The courtroom was packed. It had been 3 months, but the city hadn't forgotten. The video had gone viral within an hour of us escaping the fire. It had been viewed 50 million times. There was no spinning it this time. There was no buying the judges. The public outrage was a tsunami that washed away Thorne's influence. The FBI had stepped in, investigating not just the assault, but the attempted murder at the safe house and the corruption in the police department. I sat in the front row. I was wearing my dress uniform. My badge was pinned to my chest. The suspension had been lifted the day the video aired. The chief had personally handed it back to me, unable to meet my eyes. Next to me sat Martha. She looked different. Her hair was clean and cut. She was wearing a nice dress. She was still in a wheelchair, but it was a new one, lightweight and titanium, paid for by the thousands of donations that poured in from around the world. And sitting on the floor between us, wearing a service vest that said Court Support Dog, was Buster. He still walked with a limp. He always would. He had scars on his side where the fur grew back white, but his eyes were clear. His tail was thumping a slow, steady rhythm against the floor. Preston Thorne and his friends sat at the defense table. They looked small. They weren't wearing varsity jackets today. They were wearing ill-fitting suits. Preston was crying. His father wasn't there. Julian Thorne had been arrested 2 weeks ago for racketeering and obstruction of justice. His empire was being dismantled brick by brick. The judge read the verdict. On the charge of aggravated animal cruelty, guilty. On the charge of assault in the 2nd degree, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy, guilty. The room erupted. The gavel banged. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just reached down and rested my hand on Buster's head. Martha grabbed my other hand. She squeezed it tight. "We did it, Jack," she whispered. "He's safe." "Yeah," I said softly. "He's safe." Later that afternoon, the sun finally broke through the clouds. It was the first warm day of spring. I walked down to the river, the same spot where I used to run to escape the ghosts. But I wasn't running today. I was walking. Martha was with me. She had moved into an assisted living apartment nearby. We had made a deal. She couldn't take care of Buster alone, not with her injuries. And well, I couldn't live without him, so we shared him, but mostly he lived with me. He was my shadow. I unclipped the leash. "Go on, buddy," I said. Buster trotted forward to the water's edge. He sniffed the air. He watched a duck float by. He didn't chase it. He just watched. Content. I sat on the bench. I took a deep breath. The air didn't smell like wet concrete anymore. It smelled like earth and river water and life. I thought about the anger I had carried for so long. The rage that had almost consumed me. It was gone. It had burned away in that fire. What was left was something quieter, something stronger. Buster turned round. He looked at me. He gave a short bark, then hobbled back toward me as fast as his bad hip would allow. He put his front paws on the bench and licked my face. I laughed. I wrapped my arms around his neck and buried my face in his fur. "I know," I told him. "I love you too. I wasn't just a firefighter who saved people anymore. I was the man who had been saved by a dog. We had walked through the fire, both of us. We had been beaten, broken, and burned. But we were still here." I looked out at the river. The current was strong, moving constantly, washing everything clean. Eventually, "Let's go home, Buster," I said, standing up. He barked again, his tail wagging, his spirit unbreakable. We walked back toward the city, side by side, a man and his dog. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the dark. Because I knew that even in the darkest places, there is always a light. You just have to be brave enough to fight for it.